Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. A real pleasure of mine tonight to introduce you to a really fascinating young lady. Monika Onoszko is her name, and she is a costume designer and an artist. And she's going to tell us a little bit about both of those experiences. Monika, welcome to our show. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm good. Thanks.
It's a pleasure meeting you. So tell me, you're a costume desigher. What does a costume designer do? How do you get a costume designer job? Fascinating.
Oh, how do you get the job? That's a good question. Well, so, and I was in costumes for a long time, but not in film. I graduated Academy of Arts and of Fine Arts in fashion design. So I started as a fashion designer, and being fashion designer and dealing with clothes all the time, people ask me to do a costume for theater, and slowly I developed this in my working career.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I was asked to do costumes for film.
For films.
Yeah.
And is for theater and films very different?
It is different.
Really? How come?
It definitely looks different because usually the costumes for film, they need to look realistic.
Right.
Even if we are talking about some unrealistic story like the future or some dystopian future or whatever, or some imaginary world, it needs to feels like it's the real in that place. Right. Like this clothes are real. And in theater,
it doesn't have to be real.
Doesn't have to. Sometimes I realize that here in Canada there is a lot of like contemporary costumes, a lot of stuff which are close to the reality, but generally, like in Europe, we use more like symbolic costumes.
Symbolic, what do you mean by that?
We just try to put some messages into, well, you always put some message in costume. Like you always give some information with the costume.
Okay.
But in theater in Europe, it doesn't need to have nothing with reality. And especially, this is like the drama theater, yeah? But when you create for opera and ballet, it's all about decoration. It's doesn't even need to be symbolic. It's more like, but it's also far from reality. And
you've also done rock musicians and performers, I understand.
Yes, I did.
That's got to be fun, trying to figure out what they're going to be wearing on stage. And I guess that's like a theater performance.
It is, yeah. Like for with the musicians for concerts, performance, and music videos, you can have a lot of fun because this is like a third category. It doesn't need to be very realistic, but it needs to be connected to the character of the person. But it can be like very visually appealing, very extravagant.
Right. And you're also an artist.
I am.
and what type of art do you do?
So I do, like, currently I'm doing lino cuts.
Lino cuts. What is a lino cut?
So lino cut, it's a printing technique, one of the many printing techniques, which involve a block of lino, which is like kind of a rubber, on which you draw, and then you carve the design, and you put the ink on it, and then a paper, and you like print this on the paper. So the places which you carved, they remain white, and the places which were untouched, they are black.
Really? That sounds sort of like batik. My mom used to do batik.
Well, batik, it's on the not on the paper, it's on the
material,
but it's
fabric, you put wax down, and where the wax goes down, the paint doesn't appear and the paint goes everywhere else or something like that. Fascinating career that you've got. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Monika in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga Night 60. We're chatting tonight with Monika Onoszko, who is got a fascinating career. I'm just really interested in learning more about it. So she is a costume designer. She grew up in Poland and she was educated in Poland and immigrated to Canada and wanted to become a costume designer for films and did that in Poland, but also theater and opera. And she's continued to do that in Canada and has worked on some fascinating films, which we're going to ask her about. And she's also been a costume designer for some rock musicians and some vocalists. And she's also an artist. And so we're going to delve into all of that and what sort of that kind of career is all about. So Monika, how are you? And welcome back. So tell us a little bit about your education. So you took a fine arts education. Whereabouts?
Yes. So Academy of Fine Arts in Poland. Mm-hmm. And I also studied kimono design in Japan.
Kimono design?
Yes.
Kimono design.
I know.
Why did you go to Japan to study kimono design?
So I was in Japan anyway, and when I came there, I was fascinated with people wearing kimono on a daily basis, and I was fascinated with the kimono in general, and I also received a kimono as a present, and at that time I didn't know that kimono is supposed to be much longer than the length which appears when you wear it. And I thought mine is just too long, and I cut it. And when I cut it and I saw the inside, I was fascinated not only about the look of the women's wearing kimono and kimono itself, but also how it is made inside. It was all handmade. And I just decided I need to possess this knowledge.
Really?
Yeah.
And why were you in Japan to start with?
I was sent with my company with which I worked, and
just happened upon this idea of kimono design.
Yes, I quickly moved to a study there.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then did you do stuff with kimonos afterwards?
Well, so my main idea wasn't to make kimonos or design only kimonos. My main idea was to possess the knowledge and to incorporate it to my collections, to my fashion collections. So I did a lot of stuff which were inspired by kimono,
really?
But they were not like kimonos. But I did while I was studying at that school, I did a lot of kimonos. We were also doing kimonos for theaters, and at that time, yes. But later, I was just using these inspirations and doing stuff.
And then, how did you get from the Institute of Fine Arts to doing costume design for theater and film?
So when I was studying, I was already doing a lot of stuff like photo shootings for magazines. I was doing already my collection. So it wasn't like there was not the point like I finished my studies and then I need to start working, because I was working during my studies as a fashion designer. I was selling my stuff and I was like really, really busy. So I was always have to go to my professors and explain them, oh, I didn't have to do my homework.
Because I was doing costume designs and fashion designs for other people. Well,
yes, exactly. And they were like, oh, yeah, we know you were so busy. So yeah, there was not like the point of switch from school to work. But I don't know, I just, how it happened that I start working. Like I just put my own money into my collection and I just start selling. That was like how it started. So I had to do the investment and the effort And later I was working for many fashion companies and
So you actually
designing
design
for them.
clothes, so not costumes, but clothes, just
Yeah.
regular everyday. Now gowns or jeans or what?
So in Japan, I was working for company which manufacture the wedding dresses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I was designing wedding dresses for them. And in Poland, I was working for fashion companies, mostly women's wear, men's wear.
Are Japanese wedding dresses similar to Western wedding dresses, or are they like kimonos?
So they hired me mostly because I had this European style of,
Right.
so I was designing like European style wedding
Typical
dresses.
white flowing.
Yes,
Really fascinating.
exactly.
And do you do any wedding dresses today, or is that something that's in the past?
No, this is the very, very past. I really don't like to do wedding dresses.
So why did you move from, working in women's fashions and wedding dresses and for fashion houses to being a costume designer for film and theater? That sounds like such an interesting move.
Yeah, but it was again, it wasn't a sudden move. I just met some directors. They offered me to do theater work, and I did it. And that was like one even in a year. Like it happens once a year. And the next year I got another offer, and the next year like 2 other offers, and it was like developed with the time. In the meantime, I was doing my fashion work.
Right.
But at one point I was very tired of fashion. I was doing so much and I was designing for so many fashion companies at the same time that I was feeling really burnout. And like one day I decided like no more. And then I switched completely to theater. Yeah.
Good. And then what motivated you to move to Canada, to immigrate to Canada?
Mostly, well, first thing is my father was always motivating me to move here.
Oh, really? Is he from here or?
No, he's not from here. He never even been in Canada before. Now, of course, he visited me many times, but he's astrologer, and he was always telling me that Canada is a good place for me and I should consider moving to this place. But I was always reluctant. I was always like, no way, I don't know people in Canada. I don't know this country. I've never been here. Like, I was always thinking that this is some silly idea of him. But I really started at some point, I started to dislike political situation in Poland, especially, but in entire Europe. And I just, I started thinking to move from Poland, but another European country, which would be actually the best, was like no option, because it was like similar to Poland, more like dangerous, like homophobic, and like the atmosphere in the energy of the people was not what I was expecting in my life. And at that point, I started searching information about Canada, and I just realized that this is a great country. Like it was always kind of neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a very peaceful country. It's full of immigrants, which means like I will not feel very strange in this place.
Yeah.
And it's also a place which is full of freedom, freedom of expression, and like people are not judgmental here. And I just thought this is a great.
What do you mean not judgmental?
I mean, like they don't judge you in a like on everyday basis. Like people in Poland, they judge everything about you,
Really?
Your behavior, your look, your everything, what you said. And here not. Here you can do whatever you want. You can behave however you want on the street, and people will not. people will just.
So you like Canada because it's more diverse, because it's more accepting, because it's not homophobic, because it's not judgmental. And have you found those things to be true as you've lived here?
Yes.
And you've been here, what, 3 years now?
Yes.
Fantastic.
3 years.
And when you came here, did you speak English?
Yes, I did.
So English wasn't a challenge.
Well, it is still still is a challenge for me.
Well, you speak very well. Getting into the film business here as a costume designer, when your experience historically was in Poland, was that a challenge?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
You had great resume and experience in Poland, but then you came to Canada. How did you get your first job? How did you get accepted within the film community here in Canada?
So I was lucky. It was like how my father said, like, you know, when he was convincing me to come to Canada, he was saying, like, don't worry that you don't know people. You will go there and you will just meet a lot of people and they will help you. And
that's how it worked out.
That's how it worked. Like first week, my well, I just realized that one of my very old friends is living in Toronto. So he told me, when I came here, I contacted him and he told me, you know, actually I have a friend and she's working in film industry, and she told me that there are meetings for like film industry people, like networking meetings. They meet and they just exchange business cards, information about themselves, and etc. And I said, oh my God, that's something for me. That's my big chance. I have to go there. And I went there and I talked to everyone. I talked to everyone. And I met a lot of people on this first meeting. They also told me about the website where I can get jobs, and it worked. And yeah, I got my first job through this contacts.
So tell us about some of the more interesting costumes that you've had to design, or films that you've worked on that you had to design an interesting or different or avant-garde costume.
Okay, so my very last experience from winter, I was in the Yukon, and we were filming a dystopian story about a girl living in the future. The world is after some big catastrophe. There is no civilization, there is no factories, so people are using whatever they find in this harsh climate in the Yukon.
And it was filmed in the Yukon.
Yes.
What was the film called?
Polaris.
Polaris.
It's not released yet, but it will be probably this winter.
Oh, really? And a dystopian, so very dark?
Well, it was very bright because we filmed everything outside in the snow. Okay. So the colors were bright, but the story was dark. Yes.
And what were some of the costumes you had to design for that?
So the costumes were very interesting. Everything was very destroyed because, like, imagine the world without factories. You don't have access to any new stuff. Everything what you have, it's reused or repurposed.
Oh, really? Okay.
So so I was actually feeling like one of the characters, because I was.
You were actually doing it.
Because like in the Yukon, it's very hard to obtain like anything because there is not a lot of shops. There is no fabric shops. So I had to create some armors and helmets and stuff. So we were actually using some old tin containers, which we found in a forest or in some random places.
Really? Fantastic.
Yeah, so it was like really creating stuff like these people will do it, like from found objects. Yeah. So and the costumes were visually very interesting, like with a lot of armors and a lot of natural fur, because like that was the other source for the clothing.
Right. Yeah.
And we even had one costume made of a real polar bear skin
Oh, really?
hide. Yeah,
Now,
but that was from the 60s. It was the old one, so I'm not feeling guilty.
when you're doing that, are you drawing the costumes out first of all to sort of conceive what you want and then sewing it, or like tell us about the creative process?
Yeah, so I'm drawing everything.
And what, with pencils or paint or what?
First pencil, then some waterproof markers, thin markers, and then watercolor paint.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So pencils, then waterproof markers, and then paint.
Yes.
That's quite the process.
Yeah, but it's not very long.
It'd be interesting to see some of your sketches, some of your paintings.
Yeah.
Of the costumes. That'd be interesting.
Sure, I can show you.
Okay, that'd be great. So
Yes.
you do that, and then you go out and find the materials.
Yes, and I have to find the materials.
And then you sew it yourself, or do you have people that?
So usually I have people. I have skills, and I can sew some stuff. I'm not like a professional tailor. I can't do like suit from the scratch, but I can do a lot of.
So you're more the
easier stuff.
conceiver, the designer, and
Yes.
someone else does the sewing.
Yes,
Oh, okay. But you pick the materials, or do they pick the materials, or you do it together?
I do pick the materials.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, because like the material, it's a very important
Sure.
part of the costume. So it can't be a random thing. So I usually pick the material.
A costume out of polar bear skin must have been interesting.
It was. I have some pictures.
And what was it? Was it a coat or an armor or?
So it was the person had like very aged costume on her, and she had some armor, and she had like a polar bear head and the entire hide like incorporate to
Really?
the costume. Yeah, but you know, the polar bear, it's a huge animal, so it's also very, very heavy. So we had to build special harness to hold this polar bear head
On top of her.
Yes, because otherwise it will be like too heavy if the whole weight will be on her head. So she needed a harness to like kind of lift it, and yeah.
Fascinating. Where do some of your ideas come from? Do you like take a shower and it just jumps into your head, or do you sit around meditating? Where does that creative spark come from?
Yeah, so from many situations, many places. When I was living in Japan, that was the most creative time in my life.
Really?
I was inspired with everything and everywhere. I was just walking on the street, and I was thinking all the time about new stuff. So I didn't have time to create everything I was thinking about at that time. But these inspirations from there are still very vivid even in my present life, even if that was like 20 years ago. So let's say in my art, which I'm doing right now, I'm inspired with topics which are important in my life now, but the whole aesthetics, it's still like kind of a Japanese.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? And so what are the topics that are important to you in your life today that motivate you?
So there are a few different topics, but like the current situation in Poland was one of them. The abortions right, something what the women in Poland were fighting for since 2016. And so I kind of put my anger into the paper, because
Anger about what?
About like government deciding about Polish women's bodies.
So a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with this. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. From what I understand is that the government changed the abortion rules, making it illegal to get an abortion, or very difficult to get an abortion. Is that correct?
Yes, illegal and very difficult, because normally you can you can get abortion in certain situations, like for example, if the fetus it's sick, have
Right.
some
Yep.
Down syndrome or whatever other disease, or it is dangerous for the woman to keep the baby because she can die
Yep.
during this time, or this kind of situations, yeah. Or if it's the because of the rape, the woman is pregnant. So
And they outlawed even that.
so now it's like not even that.
And I understand there was like riots and protests
Yes.
right across the country.
A lot, and
But
not
nothing-
only
but
in the
nothing changed.
country, also abroad.
But nothing changed.
So nothing changed. You know, I kind of abandoned the topic because, like, I was very angry at the beginning, and I was really one of these people which were protesting, but somehow at certain point I realized that this is not going in the good direction, because like this women rights organization, they were saying like abortion, it's okay, like, you know, we did that so many times, and like, you know, like I'm not okay with abortion. I'm okay with giving people
The choice.
And I definitely think people should be educated instead of giving the restrictions.
I think that's one of the things that, you know, I think that the depicting of the anti-abortion people as pro-life has at times forced the terminology that some people want to say that people that are in support of choice are actually pro-abortion. And I think the vast majority of people that are pro-choice are not really pro-abortion; they're just pro-choice.
Exactly.
And I think that it's wrong for people to think that people that think that women have a right to choose what to do are pro-abortion. Because I know the vast majority of people that I talk to would struggle with the decision to take an abortion, to have an abortion, but at the same time they think that that's their right to struggle, to think about it, to choose and decide how they would react in the situation, rather than being forced by some sort of church or government decree that this is what they had to do.
Yeah, and I fully compassionate with women which had to make this decision, and I think it's like very, very hard decision, and I absolutely think people should have choice, but yeah, I'm not thinking this is like okay, and you know, it's not contraception.
No, it's certainly not contraception. We're going to take a break and come back with more with Monika after a break. And she's also an artist. I'm going to understand a little bit about that. And I'm going to also ask her about sort of suggestions for people that might want to follow in her footsteps and how they do it. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting with Monika Onoszko tonight about a fascinating career, an unbelievably interesting career as a costume designer in theater and film and opera and in rock music performers. But also she was worked as a fashion designer of kimonos in Japan, we found out, and with women's wear fashion houses, etc. So, you know, just an incredibly interesting career. You told us a little bit about this dystopian film that you were doing up in the Yukon. Any other really interesting films that you'd like to share with us? Interesting costumes?
I did a film in Poland. It was called Pardon, for which I got the award of best costume designer in Poland 2018.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And that was very interesting for me. That was a big experience. But mostly it was interesting because we were going through the time. So in most of the films, you have like certain period of time and you focus on it. And that story began at the end of the Second World War, which means like 1945. And finished at the end of 70s. So we were going through all these periods, which were like different in a costume history. So I had to like research all these periods, and also looking for the clothes
that were appropriate to wear.
Yes. So that was interesting for me. And we had a lot of uniforms, like army uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
And also the director I worked with, he is absolutely obsessed with like natural aging of the clothes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I learned a lot from him, and I'm really grateful for that experience, because he is so picky that he wants everything to age naturally, which means like no Hollywood effects, like no artificial aging. So we were, like, me and the part of the crew were wearing the army uniforms from 1940s.
Wear them out.
We were wearing them constantly. I was wearing this my uniform for almost 2 months to give
just
them
to wear
like
it
proper
out.
Wrinkles. Yeah.
Really? That's a fun story. I like that. I never thought about that, but obviously you can't have something that's brand new on all of the characters, and so you got to wear them out.
Yes.
And in Hollywood, how would they do that artificially?
So we did well in Hollywood, but also like here in Canada, and also like most of the
world.
That's the film reality, that many times we don't have access to stuff which are properly aged, and many times we need like multiples of the same costume, which means like we need like 2 or 3 or sometimes even 5 the same looking costumes. And if the costumes needs to be old, you will not find like five identical dresses which looked old, and like they look the same. So you need to do it. So you use like stuff like sandpaper to make stuff looking old. You use special powders, Vaseline, some special sticks and also dye to give a proper color, or like some bleach to make stuff look faded. So there is a lot of
what a fascinating career you have. And you know, you watch films and you know that someone had to do it. Had to come up with a costume, and you're the one that's actually dreaming up these costumes. And do you have dreams of winning best costume at the Academy Awards or something like that sometime?
Of course I do. I know it's a long process, but I won already the best costume design in Poland. I would love to have some awards in Canada, and maybe that's going to be the next step. Who knows?
Fantastic. Congratulations. That's so exciting. And you're also an artist, and you told us about this. What was it called again?
Linocut.
Linocut.
Yeah.
And you were telling us how you cut the linocut and you put in the ink, and the ink gets left behind on the paper. Yeah. What is it that you're drawing or etching or cutting or whatever you call it?
You mean like what are the topics?
Yeah.
So
kimonos?
So no. So the topic which we were talking about, like women's right in Poland, was one of them.
And what would you do?
So I did like the whole collection of the linocuts. So about this
abortions, or about people, or what?
Yeah. So well, for example, in one of them, I use well, you will never suspect that I use hens, chickens in this. But why? Because like in Poland, the politicians and like right-wing journalists and just people were using the like kind of insulting term for a woman, calling them hen. I know in English doesn't make any sense, but in Poland, when you say like domestic hen to a woman, which means it's like unemployed woman, which is like a housewife, having no interest, no opinion, and stuff like that. So so these people were calling the protesting women like the hens,
Right.
like kind of insulting them. So the organizations which were pro-abortions, instead of fighting with this insult, they just turn it into an asset, and they developed the slogan like "Be a hen and now hatch the petition," because it was the petition to a
Now hatch
for
the
a government.
petition.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it doesn't sound really good in English. In Polish, it sounds much
Okay.
better.
Okay. Tell us in Polish what's the translation.
Bądź kurą i teraz wysiaduj petycję.
Okay.
Bądź kurą domową, yeah.
And so what was your artwork? It was of hens.
So it was, so the other symbol was like black umbrellas, because like this protest, pro-abortions were many times in the rain, and people were using black umbrellas. It looks very interesting from above, from the sky. All these black protests with thousands of people
with black
umbrellas. That's right, they call them like black protests. And so I used these symbols of like hen and black umbrellas, and I put them in kind of a Japanese design. I create like kind of a Japanese.
And do you
design.
do this in a studio, in your house, or where?
So I'm doing this at home. I have a big working table, and I do that at home. So for a lino cut, normally when you want to print it, you can do it at home, but it's very it's a time consuming. I mean, only the process of print. Because you need to press it very carefully, but you can do it also in studio with using a printing press. So I don't have an access to a studio. That's right, I'm doing this at home, but yeah, but I will need to make like more and more prints, and now
when you do this lino cut, can you do more than one
yes.
print? So it's like a print,
yeah.
That you can, or a tie-dye that you can do repeatedly.
Yeah.
Oh, really beautiful. Okay.
So you can do how many you want, but normally if it's like less prints of one design, it's like more
valuable.
Yeah.
So my prints, I've got like 1 of 10 or something like that.
Yes,
do you put numbers
exactly.
of okay? Yes. So you indicate how many
yes.
how many you've done. Absolutely fascinating. I understand you've got an Instagram site that you profile a bunch of your artwork on.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called?
So it's my name, Monika Onoszko _art.
Monika Onoszko _art.
Yes.
And that's on Instagram. There's their website as well, or just the Instagram site?
So my website, it's on my website are only costumes. I don't put any art there.
Okay.
Yet.
and if people want to, take a look at your art and buy your art, they can do it through the Instagram site?
They can write me. They can write me.
So Monika Onoszko _art.
Yes.
Fantastic. What a really interesting career you've got. So what's next for you? Just more films, or anything, what other than becoming the winner of the best costume designer at the Academy Awards? What are the dreams? You want to work on more films, or more theater, or more rock stars, or more art, or what?
I love, for now, I enjoying my film work. And of course, I want more film, but not as overwhelming, because since I came to Canada, I'm working constantly with the break of the lockdown only. So I would like to have more theater work because I love that. And I would like to have more time for my art.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like divided between these three, but theater not necessarily now, because it's very hard to work in film. It requires a lot of like strength, and like there is like very long working hours, sometimes in harsh conditions, like in the
Yukon.
Yukon.
Where did you stay? Was there a hotel you could stay in, or okay?
Yes, it was a hotel. So I would love to like work in film in summer and work on my art in winters. That would be like a dream situation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible experience with us. It sounds wonderful. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back more with Monika, and we're going to sort of elevate, because one of the things that I find really quite interesting in a lot of the different people that I get the chance to interview is they've figured out what makes them passionate in life and what their dreams are, and yet so many other people in life haven't figured that out yet. And so I want to ask Monika a little bit about, how she figured out what she was passionate about and found her way. And, lots of people would think costume designer for a film, like, my gosh, how do you, that's what I thought. How do you possibly get that kind of job? So we're going to talk a little bit about that after the break in our concluding comments. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Monika Onoszko, who I have just been, blown away by what an interesting career that she has had. She's immigrated from Poland to Canada. And it's an interesting story that you've got, and why you wanted to come here. And it's, I think, something that a lot of Canadians need to hear, that you thought that we were more accepting, less homophobic, more tolerant, full of immigrants and more diversity, less judgmental. So it's things that I think we'd like to feel about ourselves that maybe sometimes we don't feel about ourselves. So that was an interesting discussion we had. And then your whole description of how you decided to become a fashion designer, and you worked in kimonos, and then in women's wear, and then in theater, and then in film and opera and rock stars, and now doing art in a type of art that I've never heard of before. So I got to ask you a question. Lots of people have real troubles trying to figure out what they're passionate about. Mm-hmm. How did you figure out that you were passionate about fashion design and costume design? How does that jump into your head that says, I want to become a costume designer?
Yeah, so I was always interested about art. Always, since I was like really little child, I was very skillful, and I was all the time creating some stuff. And so that's right, my parents were giving me these opportunities to bringing me to some art lessons and stuff like that. So I got my first like professional big easel and oil paints when I was 8.
Oh, really?
Yes.
First easel at 8. Okay, well, that's a good start.
Yes. But that's the art. But fashion design, I was really that I have through my best friend mother in elementary school. She was a fashion designer, and me and my friend Kasia, we were spending a lot of time in her studio. We were like doing some stuff, and we were like watching how she's working, and I was absolutely fascinated about this work, and I was dreaming about to have the same kind of work. And my first fashion show, I participate as a guest was when I was a kid, when I was in the elementary school, and my friend's mother was showing her collection, and she brought us there, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I want to do that. Yeah.
So what's the lesson for other people? Is it, you said you got an easel when you were 8. Mm-hmm. Did you want the easel, or did your parents suggest it and said you should have an easel?
No. That was absolutely my dream. Like when I got it, I was the happiest kid ever in the earth.
So I think one of the lessons there is that when children show an interest in something,
yes,
fermented by getting the easel or getting the violin or the piano lessons or whatever. So that's one. But then I guess the other one is having a mentor, having an example, having inspiration. And your friend's mother was clearly an inspiration in that regard.
Yeah, she was. Well, my mother was inspiration too. She was never a fashion designer, but she was very interested in clothes, and she was always like putting a lot of effort in her look. And yeah, that was like but the main inspiration to as a work career was that friend's mother. Yeah.
So that's a little bit about how to find your passion. Resilience would be the other word that I'd use to describe you, because you came from Poland to Canada a couple of years ago. You didn't know people. You didn't have a job lined up. You came here with a dream that your father, as an astrologer, said it was the right thing to do. How did you find that backbone, that resilience, that courage to move across the ocean?
I have no idea. That's actually the most difficult question in this entire interview. I don't know, Brian. It's just when you believe in something, you just do it. And I believe that that's the right move. And I think also the motivation of having a child and dreaming about like better future for your child, it's a very important thing. I think like there is a lot of stories about mothers which are changing their lifestyle, their careers, creating like big businesses and stuff like that after giving a birth to the child, so because they suddenly are motivated. They have someone to live for and do big things for. And I was also thinking about my daughter. Like I want her to live in a pleasant environment and not judgmental environment, in a like safe place, in a place where I will not have to worry that she's going to school by herself. Yeah, that was my huge motivation.
So we've talked about finding your passion. We've talked about resilience and courage. We talked earlier about creativity and that you're this incredible creative person, that you get these ideas all the time in different places. And a lot of them came when you were in Japan. What other words would you describe you? Courage, resilience, passionate, creative?
That's, to talk, well, I know that we were talking about myself like all this time, but it was more about work. But when it turns to like myself, like deeply who I am, it's so difficult to speak by yourself about yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm a definitely happy person.
Are you?
Absolutely.
Are you ambitious?
I am. Yeah, I am, but not in a wrong way. I think like it's like healthy ambitious.
Mm-hmm. So
moderate ambitious, I would say.
Okay, so yeah. not crazy. So do you think being a happy person, do you think being an ambitious person is an important motivator for people that are courageous and resilient and creative?
Yeah, I think, happiness, when you emanate happiness, when you are happy, you emanate this happiness, and people can feel that, and they are more drawn to you, and this creates a positive situations in your life. So, like positivity create another positivity. So I think that was the big factor which helped me here, and like helped me always in my entire life.
So if some teenage girl is listening tonight and saying, my gosh, I want to be a fashion designer, and whether it's a costume designer or a fashion designer for a major brand, or coming up with her own fashion designs, what advice would you give?
So of course, like getting a proper education, it's a very important thing. Although there is like many people doing this without education, I think it pays off when you are really educated and you know everything. So
there's fashion design schools in Canada, or
there are, there are. And finding a mentor, it's a good thing. Like doing
your best friend's mother, that's a helpful mentor.
Yes.
But finding a mentor. No,
but I think like at that time it was I was lucky that I knew her. But like in the present time, we have internet. It's so much easier to find mentors, even like very, very high level mentors. I think people which are successful, they really like to support other people in their success path. Yeah. So it's so much easier to find mentors now.
I think the other thing about your story that we've talked about, but we haven't summarized, is this Japan experience. And that you talked about that was one of your more creative time periods.
Yes.
And lots of people tell me that as well, is that it's when they're in a different environment, different country, or, you know, different job or a different environment, somehow that ends up being a source of creativity, just because you're colliding what you used to know with what you are currently experiencing. And
Yes.
so go and experience the world, I guess, would be another lesson learned.
Definitely. Yes. And just don't be afraid of experience the world, because like people are very afraid to make whatever move in their life. If they are not pushed to do something, most of the times they just remain in the same situation. So it's like good to push yourself.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. So remind us, if people want to check out either your art or your costume designs, what's the best way to do that?
So my website, it's monikaonoszko.com. So there is a lot of my costume work there. And like Instagram, it's another.
And the Instagram is Monika Onoszko _art.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, that's our show for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Monika Onoszko, for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. You can get all my podcasts and videocasts on my website, briancrombie.com. My videos are on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and my audio podcasts are on Apple Podcast, Audible Podcast, and Speakeasy. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.